these groups being funded by groups like Soros and Arabella to what? To stabilize our political situation? To turn America into one-party state?
That's a political benefit.
Is this correct, Senator Corn, that your lieutenant governor was managing the Signal chat site?
She's overtly made those statements, as our governor has. Get out there and go interfere and block them.
Who facilitated the Somalians in Minnesota?
Minnesotan-led NGOs, as well as some national ones. But each and every one of the dollars, when we talk about the fraud, are also feeding that network for pure political gain and eternal power.
Senator Johnson.
Hey, Mr. Chairman. Let me try and tie together what I think is some pretty extraordinary testimony here to really get to what is going on here. The political aspect of the fraud, of making people dependent on government to keep one political party in power. So I was shocked by recent revelation. I'd never known this before. St. Louis Federal Reserve actually tracks the assets of non-governmental organizations, NGOs. $14.1 trillion is the latest estimate. $14.1 trillion. Now, let me, because we don't have enough time to go through this whole thing, but during the open borders of the Biden administration, we heard repeatedly that there were NGOs operating in the Darien Gap, facilitating and welcoming people that they then funneled up into America, millions of people coming to this country illegally. Generally oftentimes being funneled into blue states, into sanctuary cities, sanctuary states. Now, Mr. Bruner, what you're talking about is these groups being funded by groups like Soros and Arabella to what? To stabilize our political situation? To turn America into one-party state? I mean, tell me what your testimony is all about here.
Yeah, thank you, Senator. That's exactly right. I mean, it's to create a political benefit by bringing in. So in the case of California, there are estimates that range to up to 13 representatives just through apportionment, not even taking into consideration voter fraud and illegal migrants who make it onto the voter rolls, which we know happens. Just through apportionment, you're talking about 13 members in the House who shouldn't be there if it weren't for all of these millions of migrants under Biden. So that's a political benefit.
The ranking member made a statement that people are furious about what we're seeing in Minneapolis. You know what they're not furious about is where ICE is doing what ICE has always done under the Obama administration, under the Clinton administration, under the Biden administration, where they actually enforce our laws and they get cooperation from state and local governments. Okay, literally, Trump is behind deportations and removals and returns from Clinton, Obama, and Biden. But all of a sudden now, the public is furious. Why? Is it because NGOs are funding the 30,000 trained observers, I'd call them activists, who are, some of them are actually shooting at ICE officers, right? They're ramming their vehicles into their vehicles. They throw rocks at them. One of them actually showed up with a semi-automatic pistol with multiple clips of ammunition, correct? So ICE officers are obviously on hair trigger alert. And these government officials, is this correct, Senator Corn, that your lieutenant governor was managing the Signal chat site that was following ICE enforcement actions and deploying their observers to the scene?
We haven't been able to verify that the lieutenant governor has, but she's overtly made those statements, as our governor has. Get out there and go interfere and block them. One representative, Tabke, has been in those chats and actively promoting them.
So those groups, those officials that are training these observers and then encourage them to put themselves into harm's way, right? To obstruct law enforcement. Who's really responsible for the fact that they got hurt? Again, I would never encourage my supporters to go obstruct justice. Yeah. Put yourself in harm's way. I won't go there. But we need to understand exactly what's happening in this country. This didn't just happen. These protests just didn't spring up. Now, some of the protesters they may be coming out and you listen to the appeals, the governor say, go record this. But these people are trained, correct, Mr. Bruner?
Yes, Senator.
Trained and encouraged to do this. Mr. Telkov, you said that you've calculated the fraud about $1 trillion a year.
Yes, sir.
What metric do you use? Because I want to go to those sources. I want to figure this out because that's probably a low estimate as well.
Yeah, well, we have unique access because of our position. So it's looking at mule networks, identity theft rings, foreign IP infrastructure. And here's the worst part, especially in government, seeing the same identity used in all 50 states and not being able to do anything about it.
So again, I want, if you're willing to, questions for record, I'd like you to provide those sources of that data. I'd love to see how you've mapped out the funding of these organizations. Now, again, I talked about NGOs facilitating the Biden open borders. Let's go back to what happened with Somalians into Minnesota. Were there NGOs that were supporting that effort as well? I mean, is this the same thing just on a much smaller scale? And are we just seeing the maturity of it? We just haven't got, well, I'm sure we've got to that level of fraud in California, but not necessarily with the new immigrants. But Senator Corn, what do you think? Who facilitated the Somalians in Minnesota?
Minnesotan-led NGOs, as well as some national ones. Minnesota has been one of the leaders we're a sanctuary state, not legally, but we are by the fact that our large metro cities are sanctuary cities, and you've seen those policies. But if I could add one piece to it, you've talked about kind of what are the motives, and we're only talking about the violent protesters and the organization and coordination, but each and every one of the dollars when we talk about the fraud on the other side, the first part of this conversation, are also feeding that network for pure political gain and eternal power.
So Mr. Talkoff, you also mentioned that the Secretaries of State facilitate this by allowing people to register their businesses. Somebody's trained these people to do this, right? I mean, I guess a bunch of people could have the same idea, but my guess is somebody somehow is being trained to go to the Secretary of State, register as a business, claim you have all these kind of employees, and this is how you commit fraud in all these programs. I mean, would you dispute that?
No. The fundamental issue is that when we look at fraud, we look at it as a country through a program, whether it be EBT, unemployment insurance. And what happens is the criminals look at it nationally, not statewide. And by setting it up the way we have it set up, we allow them to share their quote-unquote sauce. And whether it's unemployment insurance fraud, EBT fraud, healthcare fraud, they share that across the country and they work at scale. That's why federal law enforcement needs to be engaged in these investigations, because state and local agencies can't handle them. They eventually lead back to transnational criminals in countries such as Russia, China, et cetera.
And I would argue the reason the GAO, and I love them too, they can do some great work, but they're so incredibly ineffective. The same thing with IGs. They're not actually looking at the true perpetrators of this fraud. It is foreign actors, it is transnational criminal organizations, it is the non-governmental organizations that we funnel all this money through, and we don't track it. I mean, where did they get $14.1 trillion worth of assets? Could that potentially be taxpayer funds that we funneled through them that they're supposed to give to some worthy cause that they just put in their bank account? Is that what's happening here? Again, we need to open our eyes. We need to understand exactly what's happening here, but I think it's the shadow groups that the chairman was talking about here. They need to be fully investigated, and we need to understand exactly what's happening. This is far more than a couple one-offs or an outrageous example of Minnesota. This is endemic. This is persistent, and this is costing American taxpayers probably at least $1 trillion out of the $7 trillion we overspend every year. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.